You might think you are a master of handling a busy schedule. In reality, your brain might be losing its edge with every switch you make. 1. The multitasking illusion. Cognitive psychology calls this behavior context switching. Your brain does not actually process two complex tasks at once. Instead, it forces a hard restart on your focus every single time. Think about checking a quick text while writing a work email. That 10-second glance feels completely harmless to your overall flow. Research suggests it takes much longer to regain your original depth. You lose significant chunks of your productive time to these tiny gaps. Your ability to process complex information drops sharply as a result. You might find yourself feeling busy, but accomplishing very little. Notice how often you reach for a distraction when work gets hard. Every switch is essentially a tax you're paying with your intelligence. This isn't just about focus, it's about how much data you can handle. You probably feel like staying informed is a fundamental part of being smart. 2. Information gluttony. Psychology shows that your brain needs downtime to move data into long-term storage. Cognitive psychology calls the problem we face today cognitive overload. This happens when the flow of new information exceeds your brain's processing capacity. Think about how you use your phone during every tiny gap in your day. You scroll through news alerts while waiting for the elevator or sitting on the bus. Even during your lunch break, you are likely feeding your brain more content. By constantly consuming, you never give your mind the silence required for consolidation. Consolidation is the process where temporary memories become permanent and stable. When you skip this phase, your ability to learn new things actually decreases. Your long-term memory becomes weaker because it is never allowed to finish its work. You might find yourself forgetting the details of an article you read just yesterday. This habit creates a persistent sense of mental fog that follows you around. Your brain's workspace is always full, leaving no room for original thoughts. Without mental gaps, your brain can't make the creative connections that signify intelligence. Ask yourself when the last time was that you simply sat in silence. If you reach for your phone the moment you feel bored, you are overfeeding your mind. You are trading deep understanding for a shallow stream of constant updates. Eventually, this lowers your ability to focus on complex or difficult tasks. The brain becomes trained to only expect short, easy bursts of stimulation. Your capacity for deep work begins to wither from lack of use. Researchers find that people who consume the most information often remember the least. You might feel productive while scrolling, but your cognitive battery is actually draining. By the time you need to think clearly, you are already mentally exhausted. Take a moment to realize that doing nothing is sometimes the smartest thing you can do. But filling the gaps in your schedule isn't the only way you're outsourcing your brain's power. You might think having the world's information in your pocket makes you smarter. 3. Delegating your memory. Cognitive psychology calls this phenomenon the Google effect. When you know information is easily searchable, your brain decides not to store it. Your mind essentially treats the internet as an external hard drive. It stops doing the heavy lifting of encoding details into long-term storage. Think about how often you use a GPS for every single trip. Even for routes you have driven a dozen times, you still follow the blue line. Or consider how many times you look up the same basic facts. Instead of remembering, you just rely on the speed of your browser. The problem is that memory is like a muscle that requires resistance. Research suggests that parts of the brain can actually shrink from underuse. The hippocampus handles both spatial navigation and complex memory retrieval. When you outsource these tasks, that mental hardware becomes less efficient. You slowly lose the ability to form a mental map of your world. This makes you more dependent on tools and less capable on your own. Ask yourself, when was the last time you memorized a phone number? You likely feel a slight sense of panic if your battery hits 5%. That panic is the realization that your internal library is currently empty. You are trading long-term cognitive depth for short-term digital convenience. This reliance creates a feedback loop that makes learning feel harder over time. The less you practice remembering, the more difficult memorization becomes. It is a quiet erosion of your cognitive self-sufficiency. Every time you skip the effort to recall, you weaken a neural pathway. Real intelligence isn't just about knowing where to find the answer. It is about the connections you build between the facts you already own. But having facts is useless if you can't focus long enough to use them. You might think watching educational videos makes you sharper by the minute. 4. Passive consumption is a silent trap for your brain. When you consume information without interacting with it, your brain stays in low power. Cognitive psychology calls this the illusion of explanatory depth. This is a way of saying you think you understand things more than you truly do. True learning requires active processing, like summarizing or questioning the material. Without this specific effort, new information never builds strong neural connections. Think about binge-watching a documentary series for 3 hours straight. You feel enlightened and full of new facts while the credits roll. But if someone asks you to explain the core thesis the next day, you struggle. You can remember the images, but the logic has already slipped away. The consequence is a brain that is good at recognizing, but bad at doing. You develop a false sense of confidence in your own intelligence. This prevents you from doing the actual hard work of deep thinking. Over time, your ability to solve complex problems on your own begins to wither. You become a spectator in your own life rather than a participant. Ask yourself, when was the last time you argued with a video you watched? You just let the information wash over you like a warm bath. If you aren't struggling with the ideas, you probably aren't keeping them. Your brain is a muscle that needs resistance to stay strong and sharp. Watching another video about focus won't actually help you focus. It only gives you the dopamine hit of feeling productive. True cognitive growth is usually much messier than watching a screen. It involves stopping the video and testing ideas against your own reality. Otherwise, you're just filling your head with expensive wallpaper. You feel smarter, but your actual ability to think is slowly drifting away. But the biggest threat isn't just how you consume, but what you avoid. Your brain is naturally wired to save energy by avoiding anything difficult. 5. Avoiding mental friction. Psychology calls this the cognitive ease trap. It is the preference for information that feels familiar and easy to process. However, cognitive growth only happens when you face genuine difficulty. Think about the last time you started a challenging book. You likely felt a sense of frustration or boredom almost immediately. If you put it down to scroll social media, you chose ease over growth. When you consistently avoid friction, your cognitive stamina begins to erode. Tasks that used to be manageable now feel overwhelming and exhausting. You might feel like you are losing your edge because you stopped sharpening it. Ask yourself if you are still doing things that actually make you think hard. Ultimately, your intelligence is not a fixed number, but a muscle that requires resistance. Protecting your mind starts with choosing the difficult path more often. The small habits you change today determine your mental clarity tomorrow. Remember that a clear mind is built one hard choice at a time.